Welcome to Beach Radio's Townsquare Tonight, your chance to speak with Jersey Shore newsmakers about the issues that affect you. Call 732-505-1160. Now, from Beach Radio News, Townsquare Tonight on Beach Radio 1160, 1310 at mybeachradio.com.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Tonight's program is brought to you by Davison, Eastman, Munoz, Letterman, and Payon in Freehold. Dedicated to preventing problems, creating resolutions, and achieving goals, with over 20 attorneys providing coordinated legal services since 1988. You can reach them at 732-462-7170. My name is Tom Mongelli, and I welcome you to this edition of Townsquare Tonight. We have a very distinguished group with us tonight. There are over 540 municipal courts across New Jersey, judges, prosecutors, court staffs, and defense attorneys who make the system work. Tonight we look into these courts through the eyes of a judge, a prosecutor, and a defense attorney with over a century of experience all together. We'll look at the system in terms of how it works, how perhaps it can work better. We'll also focus on driving while intoxicated, DWI, the laws in New Jersey, and the problem of substance abuse, how that is changing the approach to those laws, and how it impacts people every day. With that, let me introduce our guests tonight. Peter Letterman is an attorney whose practice is limited to DWI defense in municipal courts. He's certified by the New Jersey Supreme Court. He represents defendants across New Jersey and has done so for the past 3 decades. Past chairman of the New Jersey State Bar Municipal Court Section, and he writes a regular column for the New Jersey Law Journal on municipal courts. He's an equity partner in Davison, Eastman, Munoz, Letterman, and Payon in Freehold and Toms River. The Honorable Mark Apostolo. He's a retired New Jersey Municipal Court judge, one of the most respected in the history of the state. He was known for discerning mind and driving desire to do the right thing from the standpoint of the law and the individuals who appeared in his court. He sat in more than 10 municipal courts up until his retirement. And Stephen Zabarski. No prosecutor in the state has more active involvement in prosecuting municipal court cases on behalf of New Jersey than Steve. More than 20 municipalities in Ocean and Monmouth counties. Steve also brings the knowledge of municipal courts from his representation of numerous towns and his participation in statewide seminars involving DWI and municipal courts. Steve is an equity partner in the Toms River firm of Sitta, Holzapfel, and Zabarski, and also considered a top family law attorney in Ocean County and vicinity. Gentlemen, welcome, and for many of our regular listeners, this is the first time they're meeting you. So let's warm up a little bit with just an overview, and let's start with you, Mr. Zabarski, and work our way across. Discuss a little bit about your path that led you into municipal courts, into prosecuting, and how your experience with DWI over the years has evolved your point of view.
I started out after I graduated law school. I achieved a clerkship in the Superior Court here in Ocean County. And back then, we sat with criminal judges, civil judges, and family judges. After my clerkship, I was hired by the Sitta law firm at the time. Joe Sitta was senior partner, and Jim Holzapfel was there as the senior managing partner. And Jim Sitta was there, who was became a judge and is now retired. And Dave Millard was there. So at the time I joined the firm, we had a number of municipalities where we served as a municipal prosecutor. So being the youngest attorney in the office and the new hiree, I obviously was assigned to go out and start prosecuting in municipal courts. And I always was interested in criminal law and in prosecuting, so it was something I really wanted to do. Ultimately, we developed a substantial practice doing that. Jim Holzapfel ended up becoming a county prosecutor. Dave Millard became a county prosecutor. I also served in the county prosecutor's office for 3 years. So I've been prosecuting essentially since 1985 for 32 years. I find it to be a very productive position and enjoy it. And it just is something where you meet most of the people in the community, because it's where you have most people with traffic offenses and minor type of criminal offenses that most people call misdemeanors. We call them disorderly persons offenses, assault, trespass, things of that nature. So been doing it for a very long time, and lecture with regard to DWI, and just find it to be very important for the community and to ensure the safety of the community. And I take my job as a municipal prosecutor very seriously.
Mr. Letterman,
Sir.
defense
please
attorney
record.
seems like a thankless job in many instances. You're always fighting uphill. What drew you to that?
That's a great question. I graduated law school, and
You like a challenge, right?
that's part of it for
Okay.
sure. But I graduated law school, and when I graduated, I really didn't have a burning desire to practice law when I came out of law school. It was just the next thing that I did after college, and fortunately for me, back in those days, law school was not incredibly expensive like it is now. And I started practicing, and I literally hung a shingle out in Piscataway. And I got a phone call one day from the mayor of Piscataway, a fellow who's a state senator now, Bob Smith. And he asked me if I wanted to be prosecutor. And I didn't know what I was supposed to do, but it sounded interesting. So I said, sure, I'll do it. So I showed up to prosecute, and I was given, as Steve is given all the time, a stack of summonses. Piscataway is a very busy court, so it was a thick stack, and at the bottom was about a dozen DWI summonses. And it's something that I had done before, but when I got this stack of summonses and started looking at it, there's just some connection that was established at that point. I was interested in it, maybe because I had known people, maybe some people in my family who had alcohol issues. I don't know what it was. It was just something that I was interested in. So the more I prosecuted, the more I became involved in it. I became more conversant. I remember the first time I tried a case and I did a good job. I became confident. My legs came underneath me. And then when I stopped prosecuting, I took up the defense. So as Steve said, a lot of people come to him and he talks to people, he sees people. What's really interesting, the last day that I prosecuted, I'll never forget this. I came home, it was at night. I used to prosecute from 9 in the morning till about 10 o'clock at night. And I sat down on the corner of my bed, our bed, and my wife said, so, like, okay. And I said, I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad I'm not doing it. And I was glad to be part of the system because we were doing something. We were dealing with people, even as a prosecutor. As difficult as it may seem, prosecutor is really active in forming what happens with this person going forward. And so I felt I had made a difference that way, and I was glad that I was free of the responsibility. Steve is amazing, the work that he does. And the judge, when he was doing his job, the constant time requirements and doing it over and over and over again. But I just found something that I love to do, and it drew me to the law. So, and I've had a wonderful career, and I think I've helped a lot of people. I just really enjoyed it. So, yeah, I sometimes people say, well, why do you do that?
Mm-hmm.
But I explain to people, there are people who are in need, and I try to help them.
Did your experience as a prosecutor lead you to that decision that, you just said you didn't really plan on being a prosecutor. Once you had that experience and you started to see what was going on the defense table, how did that affect you? Because taking that leap is not something everybody do.
I never thought about it that way. I just felt that I had gotten the skills and that I didn't plan on prosecuting again. I wasn't going to look for another prosecutor's job. So the skills that I had I could apply to defending people instead of prosecuting them. And I did enjoy, helping people. I saw him do this so many times, and Steve does this. We make a difference. Municipal courts are unique. We're close to people. We're actually talking to them, and we have something important to do with their lives. I remember all the time that Judge Apostle used to spend with people, and just talking to them, addressing them, and having them and discussing with them what happened and what was going to happen going forward. And I know Steve really cares also. It's a little different than what people think. It's not just, okay, well, this is a DWI, well, this is the result or that's the result. We're really dealing with people, and we're dealing with them at a very close quarters. So it gives us a lot of satisfaction, and we all work together. I mean, it's not that we're coming in there with guns and rifles. It's not like that. We understand what we're doing. We understand what our clients are doing. We analyze the cases, and then we try to do what's right. And sometimes we have to go to war. Sometimes Steve sits on the other side of the courtroom, and the judge. We've had our cases, but I just really enjoy the interaction with the people and the fact that they needed somebody to speak up for them and give them a chance. The first thing I tell them is DWI cases are really hard, and then so now what is it that we can do to help you? So
Judge Apostolou, you embody blind justice. You are the arbiter. You sit on that bench, and you have to sort all this out. But there is so much emotion in these cases. How do you separate the emotional side of you from the rational side of you and keep it that way?
Hopefully it's your training that takes you to the forefront to be able to be that independent human being. It's not an easy task for any judge. Certainly every person comes in with their own mindset, but when you take that oath under the Constitution and to uphold the state Constitution of the United States under the authority of the people, you realize that you have an obligation to set aside your emotions to the best of your ability and to listen to the facts of a case, to hear the arguments of the prosecutor, to hear the arguments of the defense attorney, to balance all the issues under the Constitution and try to find justice within all those parameters. And you are looking at a human being. Every judge looks at that person as a human being with respect, with dignity. And you find people...
Some more than others. I'll just interject that.
So it's not an easy task. It's something that you train yourself to. Similar to Steve, I began my legal career coming out of law school. I was very fortunate to have clerked for the assignment judge of Monmouth County, Tom Chabelle. And that was in 1979 when Title IIC was just adopted, our new criminal code. So we had to interpret the criminal code. One of the other functions that I did was, for the judge, I handled all the municipal court appeals. So all the appeals that came to the Superior Court where the municipal court judge was being questioned as to whether or not the ruling was correct or not, I was reviewing that for Judge Chabelle, and we made the ultimate decision as to whether that decision was affirmed or reversed. So I, in a sense, had a great tutor, the best tutor I think I could have ever had. And he showed me in independence, he showed me respect and dignity. I watched him as my mentor, so I was blessed with his talents. And I sat on the bench for 25 years. At one time, I was in 11 jurisdictions, and not unlike any other profession. The more you do something, hopefully the more proficient you become at it. And also your ability to read people, I think, increases. So I was blessed with being able to be in a lot of jurisdictions over a long period of time to hopefully develop the proper skills in dealing with human beings.
Ladies and gentlemen, our subject tonight is driving while intoxicated, the laws that govern that in this state, and what can be done, what should be done, what could be done, and should these things be done to change them. Our number here is 732-505-1160. If you've been affected by DWI, either because you've been charged or because you've been a victim, we'd like to hear from you. We'd like your input as well. But let me start with a very elemental question, which is the fact that these laws have been in place how long now?
Well,
and
that's a good question, because Title 39, our motor vehicle law, is a combination of statutes that have been adopted over the last 60, 70 years since motor vehicles. Yeah. And actually there was an effort made to codify the statute that hasn't culminated in a new motor vehicle law. But Steve, what would you say? The DWI law is, 50 years old, something like that?
50 or 60, but
and so it would stand to reason that when they were adopted, alcohol was essentially the drug of choice, and everything else was either impossible to find or totally illegal anyway. So it really wasn't on the same wavelength. But alcohol was legal and available. So it would stand to reason that everything was pointed basically in that direction, but things aren't like that anymore. we have an incredible opioid abuse problem, and I know I don't have to tell any of you gentlemen about it. And it's starting to affect the incident count. I believe you have some good statistics on that.
Well, we can just say that the incidence of DWIs resulting from excessive alcohol consumption is down. People are smarter. People are using Uber. People are making plans, although a lot of times those plans break down. The best laid plans don't work out always. And when people drink too much, they don't make good decisions, even though their initial intents were good intents. But what we're seeing now is a surge in DWIs that involve different types of substances other than alcohol, whether they be illegal drugs like heroin or medications, excessive use of medication, combinations of medication and alcohol,
Or even combinations of prescribed medications unto themselves, where
Absolutely.
people aren't paying attention to the directions of either the pharmacist or their physicians.
And I think there are a lot of people that are prescribed medications for depression, anxiety, panic, and all these things. These medications are freely prescribed, and people are misusing them or combining them with alcohol. So it's creating a whole new layer of problems that we didn't see before.
But I have to say, I also believe that there is a substantial number of younger people, ages, let's say 18 to 25, where, as we know, the legal age to drink is 21. And these individuals are turning to, even if they're prescription medication, but they buy them on the black market. As you said, oxycodone is probably the most abused. The opioid issue is substantial. And more we're seeing when these younger people are stopped in a motor vehicle and they're driving erratically, it may not be they have alcohol in their breath at all. They're not even 21. They're not drinking, but they have marijuana in the car. They're smoking marijuana. They're taking oxycodone. And it makes for a very, very dangerous situation behind the wheel of an automobile. And the state, in fact, has a program called Drug Recognition Experts. And now,
Which Steve is talking about tomorrow.
which I'm lecturing on tomorrow at a New Jersey continuing legal education seminar. But they have drug recognition experts that now are specifically trained through the International Association of Chiefs of Police and the National Highway Safety Transportation Board, or Traffic Association, NHTSA, that are now being taught how to detect when someone may be under the influence of a drug as opposed to alcohol, and the substantial effects that these drugs have on these people as they try and drive an automobile. And it's
Is there any way to gauge the difference in the mind-altering effects of opiates and synthetic drugs as opposed to alcohol? I mean, we know that .08 is the alcohol limit, and after that it's illegal. There is no comparable thing for drugs, though, are there?
No, there's no objective standard for alcohol. As you said, .08. Now, some states will, and we were talking before what a DWI means, and other states have different types of violations. But some states are making it a violation to have a quantitative amount of marijuana or a quantitative amount of
THC.
In other words, they're doing laboratory analysis to figure how much is in your body, and they're saying if you have this much of this drug, then you violated the law. Now, I don't know how this works. I don't know how well this works. One of the problems we would have in New Jersey is this, as Steve and Judge knows, our state police laboratory, which would be producing this information, is at the present time undermanned, understaffed, and almost incapable of producing results for blood tests or urine tests. So even if you had a standard like that, that information wouldn't be forthcoming in resolving cases as it stands right now. That's one of the problems in the administration of these cases. But the way I look at it, we're talking about, well, how are we going to tell people that they violated the law? I look at it a different way. And I think that the different types of violations and the reasons for these violations should factor into how the court can treat defendants right now. As you and I discussed before, it's essentially one size fits all. So whether it's somebody who goes out and has too much of a, quote, good time and drinks too much alcohol, that person is handled essentially the same from the court standpoint as the person who's mixing mind-altering drugs, legal, prescription drugs and alcohol, or the person who has taken too much prescription drug. All these people, and they're all different. Their situations are different, but the court and the law, the court's only allowed to treat them, and Steve's only allowed to treat them one way as a prosecutor, because we look at it all the same way. And I think rather than worrying about how we're going to measure how much is in your body, that we once people are arrested, we should give them the opportunity to get better. Because we have a problem with our society, as I see it. There are too many people who are using substances. And what we see is the ultimate manifestation when they get behind the wheel of a car and substances are involved. So how many, Steve is involved with matrimonial law? I don't know how many of your clients who are distressed wives and they're not getting support, and they can indulge in different types of substances. And I'm sure you don't want to mention your clients, but it's a stressful society. There are a lot of people who are either having problems with jobs or families, or we were talking about domestic violence before, and they avail themselves of that which is cheap and readily available, whether it be alcohol or other types of anti-panic or anti-depression drugs. So I think the law has to address this so people come out the other side much better.
Judge Apostol.
Yes, Tom, thank you. In agreement with Peter, I do think that we see an evolution coming forward, and that evolution has been perhaps over the last 10 years. We see a drug court analysis. In drug court, when you're charged with a drug offense, that normally goes to the Superior Court. Presently, it's only the Superior Court that is holding drug courts, not the municipal court as of yet, because of funding, materials, and the like. However, even Governor Christie has made it as a forefront with regards to the opioid problem. So drug courts are recognizing that there is an opportunity for people to become involved in a system, a proactive system, where we can try to rescue people. Our legislation does not recognize a drug court analysis for DWI or DUI, whatever you want to call it, as of yet. There's nothing within our legislative statutes that allows a municipal court judge to defer somebody into a program. We haven't recognized that. I think the legislature, and let's give credit in a sense to the Mothers Against Drunk Driving years ago, they were in the forefront of bringing people's attention to the dangers of drunk driving. They have brought that, but again, legislatively and socially, we do not recognize defenses that allow somebody to be diverted into a drunk driving situation to say, all right, if you complete this program, we'll dismiss this case against you. That's a job for the legislature to determine. I don't think we're ever going to get there, to be honest with you. I don't know how that's going to evolve, but that's something for the New Jersey legislature to consider.
We're going to get to your ideas about how these laws should or could change, and I want to ask you why you think that way. And we'll do that in just a second, okay? Friends, I need to talk to you about this because you may be in that situation, and if you are not yet, you don't want to be, because the way the laws are now, you're going to lose your license if you're convicted of DWI, and that's just for openers. The fines are incredible. And it's probably just a mistake, but you know what? It doesn't matter. So don't risk losing that license. Why not think, if you wind up in the situation, think about the law offices of Davis and Eastman, Munoz, Letterman, and Payon. This is a full-service law firm. They've got 24 attorneys. They're situated in Freehold and Toms River. They represent a multitude of issues, whether it's business, whether it's criminal, civil, DWI, employment cases, real estate, land use. This is all within their purview. They have a website which will explain everything. That's DEMLPlaw.com. You can also call them. It's a toll-free number, 1-800-262-7170. One law firm, a lifetime of services dedicated to preventing problems, creating resolutions, and achieving goals. A law firm of Davis and Eastman, Munoz, Letterman, and Payon. We're going to continue this
discussion. We also know that
discussion.
Steve's law firm is outstanding in the services they provide in Ocean County. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that as well.
They don't know that yet?
They know that. I just wanted to confirm that.
Just reaffirming.
Yes.
Since 1933.
There you go.
You don't look that old. We'll be back in a second. Stay right where you are.
There you are, stuck miles between exits on the parkway. It's 100 degrees in the shade, but you're in the sun. On blacktop. Not a pretty picture, is it? Now, how would you feel if it was your wife or child in that car? That's why everyone at Tool Time Auto says now's a great time to check the family cars to make sure they're safe and roadworthy so no one in your family is stuck on the side of the road during the blistering heat of summer. Tool Time Auto is a full repair facility. They'll inspect the hoses, belts, batteries, and more. Tool Time's automotive technicians are ASE certified with many years of experience, and they have the latest computer equipment to fix your automobile. They'll keep all the vehicles in your family running smoothly, and you'll feel confident that your family will be safe on the road this summer. Go to a neighborhood place that is trusted by so many. Tool Time Auto Service at the Whitesville Mall at the intersection of Route 70 and Whitesville Road at Toms River. Call 732-886-6678. That's 732-886-6678.
Right now at the Home Depot, Ortho Bug Be Gone 32-ounce concentrate, ready to spray, or 10-pound bag is your choice, 2 for just $10. There's no magic to making bugs disappear, but there is Bug Be Gone. It'll knock out over 100 types of insects for fewer pests in your lawn and more money in your pocket. Start your own disappearing act with Ortho Bug Be Gone. Your choice, 2 for just $10, only at the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. Valid through August 2nd while supplies last, U.S. only.
This show is brought to you by Davison, Eastman, Munoz, Letterman, and Payon in Freehold, dedicated to preventing problems, creating solutions, and achieving goals, with over 20 attorneys providing coordinated legal services since 1988. 732-462-7170.
Now, back to Townsquare Tonight on Beach Radio 1160, 1310 at mybeachradio.com.
Welcome back, everybody. DWI is our subject tonight, and we'd like to hear from you, too, if you have an opinion about it. Have you ever been involved? Have you been in court about it? Have you been a victim of it? 732-505-1160. Our guests tonight are attorneys Peter Letterman and Stephen Zabarski and retired Judge Mark Apostolou, all of whom have an accrued experience of more than a century in this area. So they know what they're talking about. Now, when we left at the break, we were going to get into, and I don't want to shortchange this subject. So, what we're going to be getting to in a few minutes is methodologies of bringing the law up to meet the times, because that seems to be one of the sticking points with which we're dealing. But before we get to that, just let me ask you this: I'm sensing a kind of a dichotomy going on with regard to strides to bring the prescription drug issue into containment, and the ongoing push to legalize marijuana. Okay, so we have a prescription monitoring program, which is now started here, and it is expanding into other states. Do you think that is effective? Now, before I answer the question, I want to ask you about Senator Booker's unveiling of legislation to legalize marijuana nationwide and the concomitant push right in New Jersey to legalize it in the state. I see these as diametrically opposed, and I see a schizophrenia going on here, because we want it one way, but we want it the other way, and you can't have it both ways.
Well, we do have it both ways. So everybody knows that alcohol is a dangerous drug. But alcohol is easy to purchase, it's inexpensive, it's accessible to anybody over the age of 21 and probably anybody under the age of 21 if they want it bad enough. So we're willing to take that risk, and maybe it's something that society should consider, but we're willing to dispense that substance, and again, it's a dangerous drug. We're willing to dispense it everywhere and anywhere, and we know that the greatest majority of people in New Jersey will drive cars. So I think we're already there. What you're doing when you make it marijuana, you're just adding a different substance to raise the same problem. Now, obviously, the effect of marijuana, I don't know this personally, but the effect of marijuana would be different than the effect of alcohol, and it might affect driving differently. But it's basically the same thing. You're allowing substances available to people that make driving dangerous. So you either teach people how to use this, encourage them to do it the right way, make sure if they get into the system, they come out the right way, or perhaps not make it legal. Now, one of the things that I thought, I just want to throw this on the table, I thought if you get a third offense, you shouldn't be able to buy alcohol.
That is not the case right now.
No.
It's not even close to the case right now.
No.
Problem drinking, problem drug use. They're really parallel.
They're very similar. They're
Um,
similar but different, but they're similar.
I don't know that we're ever going to solve issues with society. I experienced as a judge for 25 years, I found many poor souls that were dual dependent, people who had mental issues and then became either hooked on alcohol or otherwise and caused exacerbations. When you asked about legalization of marijuana, we do have medical marijuana, of course, now in New Jersey under some strict guidelines. As you know, Colorado has authorized it. There are some grave statistics that are beginning to come out of Colorado with regards to marijuana being found in food sources and plants, all kinds of things that are happening now. So I don't know. I don't have an offering of Senator Booker's legislation. The only thing that I can tell you is my experience as a municipal court judge. I also sat as the chair of the Manasquan Random Drug Testing Committee, and several experts in the field testified in front of me. And those experts, even the most liberal psychiatrists and physicians, testified that in their opinion, marijuana was a gateway drug, meaning that by the ingestion of marijuana, it's going to be opening the eyes of a user to be tempted to try other things. So whether we need to invite society into further temptations, that's going to have to be a decision that's going to be made by, again, the legislature. So.
And let me say this, I disagree with Peter on this issue of marijuana. I couldn't be more against the legalization of marijuana. I think marijuana.
Did I say I was for it?
No, you didn't. He said then I apologize. If it comes about being legalized, I think.
I said alcohol is a similar type of problem that people get their hands on it, and there are people that shouldn't be drinking alcohol. They do. It causes bad things, and marijuana does. I'm not saying that because we sell alcohol, we should sell marijuana. That was my input.
Okay, but I think there's a substantial
Tom was
difference.
talking about a dichotomy, and I said, no, it's really not, because we have that problem right now. It's just a different substance.
But I think here's the problem. We know alcohol can be measured. We know how it affects you physiologically. We know absorption rates. We know how many ounces of alcohol equals a blood alcohol content in someone's body. And at one point, most people can agree how you start becoming impaired by the level of alcohol, and that's why we set these levels of 0.8 or 1.0.
We have machines to be able to
detect that. My point with marijuana is we don't have that. We don't know one hit of marijuana, 2 hits of marijuana. We don't know how that's going to have an effect. We know there's different strengths of marijuana depending where it's grown.
And it also depends on someone's physiology and
exactly,
someone's
but
metabolism.
To my knowledge, there really isn't a quantification like there is in alcohol as the physiological levels like there is in. You can measure levels of marijuana. I just don't think there's anywhere near the studies of how much marijuana will equal how much impairment as much as there is with alcohol. That's what I meant to say.
So I'm going to raise the question, does that mean people shouldn't be dispensed with medications that alter their minds also? The Xanaxes and all those things are like marijuana.
And I can tell you as a pharmacist's son, there are substantial research that's done with regard to prescription medication, as we know, research and development. And in that research, there are recommendations that are given to the FDA before a drug is approved to say you can have this much of that drug and we don't think there's going to be an impairment with regard to driving. But I remember as a pharmacist kid, and we all see on the vials, if there's a certain type of drug that's been clinically tested, that we know you take this quantity of this amount of drug, and there's right on the label, do not drive, do not operate heavy machinery.
Absolutely.
They put it right on the label.
But people still do.
But that's not, the point is, in dispensing those drugs, there is enough research and development to tell you this is probably the dosage you can take and operate a vehicle, and this is the dosage you can't take and operate a vehicle. I just don't think there's anything near that kind of study with regard to marijuana. That's my concern about legalizing marijuana. You're going to have a lot of people out there that now have ready access to walk into a store, buy marijuana, and start smoking it and get behind the wheel of a car. And I just don't think other than doing the psychophysical testing that we do now to detect if we think that the drug is impairing their ability to drive. That's the only way we'll be able to do it. And I just...
What if we had a zero tolerance? What if we made it a violation to operate a motor vehicle under the influence of marijuana under any circumstance?
Well, that's for the legislature to
No,
decide.
we're just talking, but you wouldn't be against that, would you?
No, but I would still be against legalizing marijuana.
Okay.
Because I agree with the judge. I think it's a drug that leads to substantial use and abuse of harder types of drugs.
Stephen Zabarski, speaking as a prosecutor now, and with the firm of Sitta, Holsample, and Zabarski in Toms River, and his confrere, Peter Letterman, who represents tonight the law offices of Davison, Eastman, Munoz, Letterman, and Payon. This is an organization with 24 attorneys in it. They're in Freehold and Toms River. If you are familiar with DWI cases, you may be familiar with them because it's one of their stocks in trade. Their clients trust them to represent them on general and complex issues in business, family law, individual cases, employment, real estate, land use. They cover a wide swath. If you're not familiar with them, you can find out about them at demlplaw.com, or you can call them at 1-800-262-7170. The law offices of Davison, Eastman, Munoz, Letterman, and Payon. My name is Tom Angeli. We have a lot of ground to cover because we're going to get into the hypothetical of if we could change the laws, how will we change them and why? We're going to get to that right after this.
Tune in every Wednesday at 7:30 a.m. right before Preferred Company with Joel and Marianne for The Lighter Side of Finance, hosted by David Crossan.
David is a financial advisor with a certified financial planner designation and senior vice president of investments with Wells Fargo Advisors. He'll lighten your day with practical financial guidance.
Be sure to join David Crossan Wednesdays at 7:30 a.m. for The Lighter Side of Finance on Beach Radio 1160, 1310, and mybeachradio.com.
Wells Fargo Advisors, LLC is a registered broker-dealer and a separate non-bank affiliate of Wells Fargo and Company.
Hello, I'm Anthony Marchetta, Executive Director of the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency. It's a brand new year with endless opportunities. Are you tired of paying rent each month or living with family? Is 2017 the year you're going to begin investing in yourself? If so, I urge you to make this year the year you buy your own home. For qualified home buyers, we have many attractive financing options, such as forgivable down payment loans and closing cost assistance. To help you begin the home buying process, we offer a free step-by-step guide, The Road Home New Jersey. This free guide has helped countless individuals and families achieve home ownership. Why shouldn't you take advantage of the same opportunity? Download it today and take the first step towards investing in yourself. Grab your free guide at njhousing.gov/homeownership. That's njhousing.gov/homeownership.
This message sponsored by the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency, the New Jersey Broadcasters Association, and this station.
There goes another home run and another $1,000 donated to a local charity that helps soldiers, their families, and our veterans. Home Runs for Heroes is back for a 9th season through a partnership between the Lakewood Blue Claws, Ocean First Foundation, and WOBM. Every time a Blue Claws player hits a homer at First Energy Park, Ocean First Foundation donates $1,000 to one of 13 organizations that provides financial support to help meet the emergency and basic needs of active and retired veterans and their families during difficult times. Charity partners include
Operation First Response, serving all branches of our nation's wounded heroes, disabled veterans, and their families with personal and financial needs. Based on individual cases, they help with everything from rent, utilities, vehicle payments, clothing, and more. Visit OperationFirstResponse.org for more.
Cheer for the Lakewood Blue Claws and all our military-based charities all season long. And for more on Home Runs for Heroes, check out BlueClaws.com. This show is brought to you by Davison, Eastman, Munoz, Letterman, and Payon in Freehold, dedicated to preventing problems, creating solutions, and achieving goals, with over 20 attorneys providing coordinated legal services since 1988. 732-462-7170.
Be a part of the conversation. Call now, 732-505-1160. Townsquare tonight on Beach Radio 1160, 1310, and mybeachradio.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Our guests tonight are the Honorable Mark Apostolou, a retired New Jersey Municipal Court
We're
judge.
honorable, too. I want you to know that, even though we're not judges.
And the super honorable attorneys, Peter Letterman and Stephen Zabarski. And we are discussing DWI laws. We hope you'll join us. We left off with the one-size-fits-all mentality. DWI, bad. You fit into this. And then we started to discuss how the introduction of and the growth of a number of different mind-altering substances has changed that. Now, does this mean that every case needs its own individual approach? And how difficult is that to achieve?
Well, they do need their own approach, and that's where the arresting officer gets involved. So you're putting your faith in the training and expertise of each police department. So they go through a very extensive training process. And you can imagine that if a police officer pulls someone over, they've got to, in fact, have all their senses on alert, because they detect an odor of alcohol? What if there is such strange driving and no odor of alcohol is emitted? Of course, their training is going to tell them, well, maybe there's some other substance in this person's body. And that's when we get involved with regards to the analysis. And as Mr. Zabarski pointed out, there are drug recognition experts that can be called to the scene. Not every police officer is trained, and I'll let Steve, since he's really up to date on this and he's going to give a lecture tomorrow, touch base on that for a second.
Well, the program started years ago, and officers are selected to go into this program, and it's a very extensive program with weeks of training. Like I said, sponsored by the International Association of Chiefs of Police and the National Highway Safety Transportation Administration. And they actually get educated on all the standard types of DWI detection, what we know as the standard field sobriety tests. And they also get trained on drugs, how they affect the body. They have 6 or 7 classes of drugs, narcotics, hallucinogenics, stimulants, and they get trained on how those drugs affect the body and or will impair someone's ability to operate a motor vehicle. And after all that training, they do get certified, and they get called to a scene when it's determined that someone is under the influence potentially of a drug as opposed to alcohol. And the way that's usually done is when someone is stopped for a driving offense and they have all the indicia, the psychophysical testing, slurred speech, impaired ability to walk or balance, and they're brought in, and then on the alcotest machine that detects your blood alcohol content, it's a 0-0, for example, and then the officer says, well, wait a second, there's something going on here, let me bring in a DRE. The DRE is brought in, and actually their evaluation takes approximately 1 hour, and it ranges everything from pupil sizing to taking someone's heartbeat to their blood pressure, all kinds of various tests that are performed, and then they give an opinion as to whether they think the individual is under the influence of a drug and what type of drug. They will ask the individual to take a urine test. They're told that they don't have to consent to that. And then if the person does give a urine sample, it's sent off to usually the state police lab or a local county laboratory for an analysis as to whether any drugs are in the person's system according to the analysis, and that only enhances the ability of the state to try to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the person was operating under the influence of a drug in that particular case as opposed to alcohol.
And let's just throw something out there. If you're a defendant who's been arrested and you're brought into a police station, do you have the right to refuse to have a blood pressure test? The answer is no, you don't have the right to refuse a blood pressure test. But with regards to it,
well, I don't think there's any case that says that's an inference of guilt because you refuse it.
There's no violation of the law for a defendant.
But it's not an inference of guilt either, I don't think. I have never heard.
No, I wouldn't say that it is an inference of guilt. Yeah. But we're just saying for those people listening out there, do I have to submit now with regards to urine test, with regards to those matters? But what we're discussing certainly is not a violation of any Fourth Amendment privileges that we've discussed, right? A motion to suppress evidence.
So my take on DRE is that officers are trained to look for certain signs that could suggest that it's one type of drug or another. And they're really not experts, and that's not to demean them. And Steve and I were talking about this before. You take the information for what it's worth, and you add that to everything else that's testified to, and the judge makes a decision as to what's the condition of the defendant. Too often, DRE tests, evaluations are self-fulfilling prophecies. At the beginning of the DRE test starts because somebody says, yeah, I took Xanax last night, or I took, I smoked some marijuana, or the officer smells marijuana. And then they do all the tests. They say, oh, yeah, he was smoking marijuana. Rarely do you see it come out something different from what the defendant says. And then sometimes the blood test shows something different. But my problem is this. The question that you asked addresses how somebody's going to be investigated and prosecuted and then whether they're going to be convicted. But that's not what I think it should be about. I think it should be about identifying somebody who has a problem, doing what has to be done. There has to be punishment in the law, and people have to know that there's serious consequences, because there are obviously serious consequences when they drive when they shouldn't be driving. So that's important. There has to be an enforcement aspect. But there has to be another aspect, too. When you have something like the heroin epidemic in Ocean County, or people using drugs because of anxiety, or just overusing drugs, or being careless and mixing drugs with alcohol, there has to be a way for society to push these people in the right direction. Because when they come into court, you have a rare opportunity to do something when you have them there. And so,
are you suggesting a sliding scale in a sense?
I'm suggesting that. I'm suggesting that.
I guess what you're saying, if I may interject,
yeah, sure.
You're trying to bring in the drug court analysis into DWI, into driving while under the influence of perhaps a narcotic. Our legislature, as it presently exists, does not allow a judge.
Right.
If I'm a judge and I have somebody who's found not guilty, I lose control of that person.
Right.
And they're certainly entitled to be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, and if the state doesn't meet its burden, they should be found not guilty.
So it's
but
really
a judge
really
loses their ability at that point in time to help someone.
Right.
You as a defense attorney perhaps are giving a recommendation saying, listen, I got you off today, but you better go get help. The prosecutor can't really have any influence over somebody once they're out. So again, it's a legislative function that we'd have to ask the legislature to consider, or perhaps in sentencing, if they were to amend some of the sentencing guidelines.
So the point that the judge just made is really an important point, and this ties into what he said before. If you have a serious drug problem and it's associated with the crime, you can be referred to drug court. The court retains supervision of you if you don't do what you're supposed to do, whether it be working or staying out of trouble or going to counseling or staying clean, doing constant testing. You go to jail. So it's a carrot and the stick. If you do really good, and you can get rewarded by the system as well. So if we have this situation in municipal court, whether it's from alcohol, a combination of alcohol and drugs, or drugs, that system doesn't work in municipal court. There is no drug court in municipal court. It's only for superior court. You have to do something, in other words, really bad. You have to be really involved with drugs and do bad things to have the advantage of this program. If you have an alcohol issue, there's no drug court available for you. So I've seen lots of people, and Steve's seen people, and the judge has seen people, who really have significant substance issues. Really bad issues, but they can't do the same thing in municipal court that they can do in superior court. All we can do is convict them. There is something called IDRC. They get some counseling for a period of time, but that's really it. And they only come back into the system if they offend again. But we don't want them to offend again. We don't want them to be out there hurting people or killing people. So we're really not taking the taking advantage of the situation when we have the opportunity to do it. And maybe it's funds, or maybe it's just a desire just to punish people. But I think the people who really need help should get help. The people who need to be put in a drug court type system should be in that drug court type system. And then also, if you're a third offender and you're convicted, you're going to not only go to jail, but you're going to lose your license for a decade. I think if you've shown that you've stayed clean for 5 years or 7 years or whatever it is, you should be able to get rewarded for this, so that you're encouraged to do what you're supposed to do. You're just encouraged to do better. And for first offenders, when they're not terrible situations, when there are low readings and there are no aggravating circumstances, they should have the opportunity to maybe drive to work, or maybe go into a diversionary program like they are with other criminal types of offenses. We have to be more flexible to deal with these very complex problems. For me, that's what it all comes down to. These aren't simple problems, they're complex, and we should have the tools available. Judges should have the tools, prosecutors should have the tools, defense attorneys should be able to suggest the tools to really deal with these things rather than just punish people.
But the public should understand also that we, in a sense, on our levels, are powerless because we can't alter laws. We're not courts of equity. We can't say, well, you know what, you're really a nice person, I'm going to bend the rules for you. We can't bend any rules. they're enforced, and it's up to the state legislature to change those laws. And of course, people have the right to write to their legislators, to contact them, to offer their opinion to their legislators.
We want to continue that discussion. We want to talk about incentivization and ways that can encourage people not to do this, as opposed to constantly punishing people not to do this. And if you'll hold that thought, we'll get back to that. These are people who do this every day. It's their careers, and they take it home with them.
It's more than that. So people, Steve, and I see, if they get a DWI, their careers could be over. And it's not, we understand that they could kill other people, bad things can happen. But again, you have to qualitatively evaluate them. But people who are applying for jobs, they do background searches. The DWI is a tattoo. It never goes away. And
That's
you can't
true.
get expunged no matter what good things you do, no matter what counseling you could teach classes to high school kids for the rest of your life. It's there. There's no relief from it. So I think there have to be other ways so these people can be dealt with in the right situations, so that these things don't happen.
Okay, let's in a second, let's pinpoint, let's try and fine-tune those situations. Where would you find the exceptions? It's Peter Letterman. He's a partner in the law offices of Davison, Eastman, Munoz, Letterman, and Payon. DWI is one of the areas in which they excel, and they have for decades, more than 24 lawyers in this firm. And they've been doing this since 1988. It's not just those sorts of cases. They deal in civil and criminal matters, litigation, employment cases, real estate. And you can reach them in any of those issues, even if it's just a question. You can reach them at demlplaw.com or 1-800-262-7170. DWI is a trap. Once you're in it, it's very hard to get out. And the people you're listening to tonight have been butting heads for several decades over it.
We don't butt heads.
3 decades.
And so they know what you're going through. So give them a call, 1-800-262-7170. The law offices of Davison, Eastman, Munoz, Letterman, and Payon, PA. We'll be back in a second, right after this.
Is that your flip? I have a.
Tune in to Beach Radio 1160 and 1310 every Saturday from 10 to 11 a.m. for Painless with Dr. Gabriel Jasper of the Jasper Spine Institute in Brick. Do you suffer from back pain? Find out about innovative techniques that will avoid unnecessary spine surgeries and finally get rid of the pain with little or no downtime. Dr. Jasper will answer your questions about how his techniques work and others don't. For more, tune in to Dr. Jasper's Painless every Saturday at 10 a.m. Only on Beach Radio 1160 and 1310.
Hi, I'm Bob Tarosa from RPM Auto Sales in Bayville. Why is RPM now the largest independent used car dealership in Monmouth, Ocean, and Atlantic counties? RPM's mission is simple: to provide our loyal customers with mechanically approved, fully serviced, clean Carfax vehicles. Our used cars, trucks, and SUVs are priced right, and now we are including a free 6-month warranty. And that's why we're your friends in the business. Check out RPMAutoSalesUSA.com. So, what do you think of our commercial? Pretty good, right? Are you on your way to RPM Auto Sales yet? This is Bob Tarosa
and Chris Tarosa from RPM Auto Sales in Bayville.
At RPM Auto Sales, we are a family-owned business that cares about you, our loyal customer. We invite you to visit RPM if you're a cash buyer, have a trade-in, or your credit is less than perfect. Check out RPMAutoSalesUSA.com.
This show is brought to you by Davison, Eastman, Munoz, Letterman, and Payon in Freehold, dedicated to preventing problems, creating solutions, and achieving goals, with over 20 attorneys providing coordinated legal services since 1988. 732-462-7170.
Now, back to Townsquare Tonight on Beach Radio 1160, 1310, and mybeachradio.com.
WI is our topic, ladies and gentlemen. We have a few more minutes with attorneys Peter Letterman and Stephen Zabarski and retired Judge Mark Apostolou. Let's discuss, now that we've established that the DWI laws in New Jersey are not designed to keep pace with the accelerated rate at which we're living and the many things that have come into it over the decades. How do we refine them? If, in the best of all possible worlds, how would you refine them so that when someone gets into this jam, there's a way, there's some light at the end of that tunnel? Because I tell you the truth, I looked at the DMV webpage, and just for openers with DWI, if you're convicted, license suspension for 3 months, up to 30 days in jail, 12 to 48 hours in the Intoxicated Driver Resource Center.
That's the minimum.
That's the minimum. It could be 7 to 12 months.
That's the floor. And then there are the fines, up to $400, $230 for the Intoxicated Driver Research Center, $100 for the Drunk Driving Fund, another $100 for the Alcohol Education and Rehabilitation Fund, $75 for the Neighborhood Services Fund, which I don't even know what that is,
Safe neighborhood.
and a $1,000 annual surcharge for 3 years.
That's an interesting. Those are all interesting stories by themselves. We don't have enough time to discuss that.
Besides what your own insurance company's going to do.
Okay, so the hammer's coming down. How do you lighten that?
It should be the right thing. It shouldn't be a question of lightening or making it harder. It should be doing the right thing so you get the best result at the end.
I don't think
No,
society's going to change those penalties per se. I think there's going to be that sledgehammer waiting for somebody. It's a deterrent. The Supreme Court in its decisions have even said that there needs to be a deterrent. However, I think, as we mentioned earlier, the ability to use technologies perhaps to afford people who perhaps are a first-time offender a work license, that's something that can be considered. And I think Peter has some insight on some legislation that may have occurred.
There's been a drive sponsored by the Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, actually, and the manufacturers of interlock devices to increase the use of interlock devices. So interlock devices are simply breath test machines, portable breath test machines. They can
And it will
install
let you start the car.
Yeah, if you're at a certain level or above it, the car won't start, and it's something you have to install. And there was a law passed by the legislature. They actually adopted the law, which, among other things, would have allowed first offenders in most conditions and some second offenders the ability to continue to drive if they got the interlock devices installed during the period of their suspension. So it was adopted, except there was one problem. Governor Christie was running for president, and he didn't believe, for whatever reasons, that the law should be adopted, and he vetoed it. So it'll come back again. I think there's a desire in the legislature to use interlocks in more situations, but we had the law in place, and for whatever reason, the governor chose not to do it.
Now, we have 1 minute, so just one more question. Okay, we're discussing how to incentivize people and how to lighten that load and get them through this so that it's not a totally negative experience. Are you not also implying in all that you can do it, you got away with it this time? And does that allow someone to think, I can get away with it again? Where do you draw the line on that sort of behavior?
Well, of course, if somebody is not meeting the burden by way of the police to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, then yes, somebody would be found not guilty. And let's assume that somebody's a .05, they should be found not guilty. For those people who perhaps get off on a technicality, and we even haven't talked about the Fourth Amendment suppression issues, for those individuals, one would hope that they realize that they made an error and that it's time to turn their life around. And hopefully they themselves would recognize that. And hopefully we have defense attorneys that are trying to do the right thing and discussing with their clients. Listen, this was an issue. You better confront it. You better face it, and you better change. That's what we hope.
Mr. Zabarski, any closing comments?
Yeah, I would say for a first offender status, as you pointed out, the monetary fines are such that they're in the multiple thousands of dollars. And then if someone's going to lose their job because they have a 7-month loss of license, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think putting an interlock in their vehicle and allowing them to drive back and forth to work on a first offender status may be a way to improve the ability of those individuals to rehabilitate themselves, pay their fines, continue to support themselves and their families while paying a penalty for being a drunk driver. I think the interlock on a first offense and not losing your license to be able to go to work would probably be a compromise.
Mr. Linderman, the floor is yours.
I would simply say I'm a believer that people need to be encouraged to do the right thing, and I've used this example many times. Just by punishing people, you don't get them to do what you want them to do. You punish your kids all you want, but sometimes punishment isn't the best way to get them to act the way you want them to act. Sometimes they do the opposite when you punish them. But it's a tremendous burden when people are charged with these offenses and when they're punished. Everybody isn't Tiger Woods. That's a whole other story, but he's going to come out of this fine. It damaged his reputation, but he'll have all the support to get through. For the normal person, it's a crushing experience. So if reasonable people can discuss these things, hopefully they can reach decisions and improve the law so we have a better situation on the road and people can move on with their lives, not suffer forever because of it.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening. Townsquare Tonight, this edition brought to you by Davison, Eastman, Munoz, Letterman, and Payon, and Freehold in Toms River. Dedicated to preventing problems, creating solutions, and achieving goals. With more than 24 attorneys providing coordinated legal services since 1988. 732-462-7170. It's a presentation of WOBM News and Townsquare Media, New Jersey. Producers are Mark Anthony, Bradley James, and Tom Trimley. If you missed any part of the program or wish to hear or see it again, visit our YouTube channel or mybeachradio.com. Have a pleasant evening, and thank you for listening.
This has been Townsquare Tonight, a presentation of Beach Radio News. To find out more about tonight's show and stay up to date on everything happening in your hometown, log on to mybeachradio.com. The Jersey Shore's best oldies, Beach Radio 1160, 1310, and mybeachradio.com. Beach Radio is 1160 WOBM Lakewood Township, 1310 WADB Asbury Park.